and people drive a lot more too. That's another thing. It's not a big deal. I live in Howell and drive to Farmington every day, back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay, back in the days, people, what they say, usually lived within 10 miles of their house.
Yeah.
We have no problem driving an hour nowadays.
Right.
Yeah, I think my dad drove 20 minutes to work maybe, and that it seemed like a haul. We lived in just north of Fowlerville. He drove to Williamston for work. My mom worked in Fowlerville. Yeah, you're right. I mean, both were within 20 minutes.
And traffic jams, the heat and everything that goes on and fluids and stuff like that. Power steering fluid, I know it gets, the high pressure and everything turns to grit and sand and stuff like that. Power steering flushes, we do them. I'd like to talk about the benefits of power steering fluid flushes. I'm going to be completely honest with you here. I do it because a lot of the manufacturers of these parts, these racks and stuff like that, you have to do a fluid exchange or they will not warranty it.
Yep.
What is the benefits of the power steering fluid besides cleaning out the sand and stuff in the bottom of the things? I've really flushed systems several times and really not have noticed a difference like I do your other flushes.
Well, there are a couple of benefits, and to be fair, that's almost a Vantage service. Almost everything's electric now. But there was one of them symptomatic when you would hear the whining power steering. Maybe the Ford Windstar with the 3.8 was a great example. You could make that power steering pump quiet right down. In the GM world, they had a bulletin out about that, whining power steering pumps, and it was replaced the ATF with actual power steering fluid. So those are a couple of examples. But the biggest thing, though, is if we can, because that's a very small system. Most of them have ATF operating at 3 times the pressure that ATF would in a transmission in a smaller system, and in a lot of cases unfiltered. So it's the same fluid in a much more intense environment with less capacity. And as you get metal debris, if it's a seal material, ultimately it can damage seals in the rack and you get a leak in rack. And power steering racks leaking are very common.
Yeah.
And so the primary reason is if you keep the fluid clean, you can keep it debris free. You keep the seals from being damaged and the rack isn't going to leak on you.
A lot of the stuff we still work on obviously still has pumps and tie rods and stuff like that because we work on trucks, vans and stuff like that.
Yep.
What is recommended? What's the average they say to change the fluid on them?
Most of my dealerships, when they have an interval for power steering service, which most of them see probably less than 10% of their customer base is hydraulic power steering, they're wanting them at 45,000 miles. And one of the biggest motivators is, hey, just get the free coverage. It's a cheap service. It's $180 or whatever it is. And you're getting at 45,000 miles, $4,000 of free coverage. If your rack fails, your pump fails, someone else is going to pay for it. And at the very least, you're not going to have an issue. Just get it done.
That makes sense. I mean, we do it, like I said, a lot of times on the power steering gears and stuff on the Fords and stuff like that. It's just, might as well put new fluid in if you're doing the job right, correct?
Yeah, for sure.
What I mean? You're going to put shitty fluid back in a brand new unit? No.
No, well, if a component's failed, a lot of times there's potential metal in the system anyway. Just change all the fluid out versus some of it.
What are you thinking about differentials?
So differential fluids, I know in the GM world, they kind of mirror what the trans service interval is, 45,000. A lot of my dealerships are 50,000 miles. They recommend it. If they tow, I know GM's, their severe duty schedule on some of their trucks is 22.5. So on my work vehicle, they make me get it every 30,000 miles. So my personal vehicle, I'm probably about every 40,000, because I don't have protection plan. I'm too high a mileage for it. So I'm roughly 40,000 miles for my personal vehicle that has differentials.
Yeah, now transfer cases, a lot of them still run ATF or a type of ATF fluid. And I could talk about these all day long because I used to be one of the only guys in town that would actually take them apart and rebuild them.
Okay.
And they had a lot of phenolic parts in them, the little shoes on the forks and stuff like that would get brittle when the fluid got shitty and it would just eat them, so they'd fall apart. Then you'd have a situation where you go to pull it in gear and it would grind for a second.
Yeah.
That's what had slack. So we always change transfer case fluid. I don't know which way they've gone now, and I can't tell you. I haven't taken a transfer case apart in 10 years, honestly.
So as far as manufacturer recommendations, I can't remember where a lot of them are at. Most of my dealers, if it's a four-wheel drive vehicle, they do a driveline service, diffs, T-case all together. So just do it all as one service. Yeah,
with that said too, I mean, we're getting back to the engines with all the different viscosities and oil and everything. There's TSBs out there now from the OE manufacturers with viscosities in the rear ends with the gears. You're not putting the right viscosity GL5 in the rear end, you're getting a chatter, and you got to pull this brand new fluid out and actually put the correct weight of oil back in it, and it clears it right up.
Yeah, you're talking about clutches and stuff like
Yeah.
that, the clutches and steels. We have come into that situation where these guys don't put friction modifier in it. And a lot of these newer fluids have the friction modifier in the fluid.
Yeah. Yep. Ours does. It says LS on there. Yep. That's what it is.
Yeah, you're 100% right. We've had them where they've come from other shops, and the guy's like, I have my, and it go around the corner, it's chattering and stuff like that. Our actual parts van does it.
Yeah.
We bought it from the guy, and he was out of town, and went to a Coca-Cola change place, and they did, and he drove the thing 900 miles or 1,000 miles, and all the steels are junk. When we go around the corner, it shakes, and I just haven't fixed it yet, but I know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Because it does, it soaks into there. I don't remember how depth used to get into it back in the day when we rebuilt these rear ends. We would take them clutches and the steels, and we would drop them in a gear lube, let them soak for a day.
Yep.
Before we could do the rear end, because you couldn't put them in dry because they would get all tore up, and then they would be grabby and cause all kinds of chatters. Yeah, very
Did the
interesting.
same thing in the race cars, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So, yeah, and let's move on to cooling systems. This is another one that should be easy to sell, I believe.
sure.
It's simple, right? It's going to freeze or it's not going to freeze, right?
Well, or it's going to eat the inside of the engine, or it's not going to eat the inside of the engine.
And I'm going to start this off with the Tritons when they came out. Do you guys remember that whole debacle?
Well, the 4.6, the 5.4s?
5.4s. They would come in with a coolant leak.
Intake gaskets? Was that on the 4.6s? It was intake gaskets,
No,
wasn't it? Okay.
5.4s and V10s would come in with a coolant leak. You would pressurize it; it would look like a sprinkler out of the front of the heads and out of the sides of the heads.
Oh, really?
The antifreeze was too strong. The antifreeze was eating the aluminum heads, holes in them. They were coming in with holes in them.
So I assume it was high on the pH scale, very alkaline, right?
Yes.
Because that's
and
coolant
it
needs
would
to be
literally
alkaline.
eat holes in them.
Wow, I did not know about that.
Oh, yeah. So listen, this gets better. So Ford decides, well, that's not a big deal. This is a situation. We're just going to sell the parts dirt ass cheap. So they were selling complete heads. And I don't remember the price. We'll just say the price was $450 for a head. I sold heads for 2 years straight. And I remember we were working on conservative electric. Their one truck came in, holes in the head. Sure as shit, you need heads. A month later, the other truck came with holes in the heads. Well, shit, I'll just copy that estimate on this estimate. Nothing's changed, right? Order the parts. Ford decided, game's up. We're going to put a head gasket in that box and head bolts, and all of a sudden this kit is a head kit and it's $2,000.
From 450 to 2,000.
Yeah.
Which 450 is pennies for a head.
Correct. And I'm just using them
Yeah.
numbers, kind of what I remember. But they came out with a TSB. Hey, you have to put 50/50 coolant in it. That caused all them problems.
Wow.
There was shortage of cylinder heads everywhere. You couldn't get them. And I remember looking at the first one, and I thought to myself, am I on drugs? Like, looking at this, like, you pressurize, and you're like, it looks like it's leaking behind the AC compressor. You take it all out, and it's just pissing out like a sprinkler.
Are these the 2-valve, like back in like 97, 98, 99,
Yeah, it
2000?
was the first generation of them.
Okay, that was before I got in the bit. My dad owned a 4.6
Yeah.
back then.
They had all kinds
Still
of
owns it
problems.
for that matter. I got it brand new, 97, still has it.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
They
they'd use the
fixed
heck out
that
of
with the antifreeze. So going on, let's talk about not changing your fluid. Now, if his deck's cool, you're kind of screwed no matter what you do.
Well, what amazes me about the intervals that manufacturers still tout for coolant is all of the cooling system problems that we see in the market, whether it's plugged heater cores, it's leaking radiators, or failed water pumps, and it's not limited to any particular brand. With an asterisk, heater cores seem to be very unique to Mopar, but
I was just going to say the butthole of
not
the world.
yeah, and they've got a unique parallel flow design, so the back half, the passenger side loses heat in all of them. And anyway, one of our biggest protection plan claims in the Mopar world is heater cores, which that's why
Evaporator cores, too.
I didn't know that.
Okay. They're great. Love them.
Yeah. The manufacturers put some very brazen claims out for when you should change your coolant, but your heater core, your radiator, that's under your 336 bumper to bumper. So some of them say you can go 150,000 miles on your coolant. That's 114,000 miles after they've forgotten your name and VIN and say we don't cover your coolant system anymore. And that blows my mind. I had a shop in Adrian Continental Service, great guys down there years ago. And I came in there as like 105,000 mile, 3/4 ton Ram. And they said, Mike, we did a coolant flush on this vehicle because he had lukewarm air coming out of the vents and it didn't fix it. So we put the cleaner in, we sent him home for a week. We had him come back and flush it. Still the same situation. We ended up selling him a heater core and we cut it open. Look what's built up in there. We thought that if there was some flow in the system, your cleaner would dissolve that and clean it out. And I said, well, thought it would too, to be fair. So I called BG and I said, what's the deal with this? He goes, is it kind of like a grayish jelly in there? I said, yeah. He said, it's the silicate dropout from the coolant, and it's a ton of eroded metal. That coolant's eating the inside of the cooling system. He said to clean that out, you need a very strong acid, like something that if you left it in the engine would eat its way out overnight. You need something. We've got a case of gross customer neglect. Now they're trying to fix it with a maintenance service. And the crazy part is they almost followed Dodge's interval right to the T. I mean, they said, I think it's either 100 or 105,000 mile interval on that cooling system, and they did it right on cue out of necessity, and it was too late. But the manufacturer offered no help, not to knock the OEMs, but they can put an interval out, but when something fails, it's on your dime.
It costs, and consumers the one's going to pay.
Yeah, so we always recommend at least start the maintenance before 75, but better yet, start your maintenance as you're leaving the factory warranty and pick up the free coverage. So now going forward, we're paying for it. You're still not on the hook for it. And we try to be very transparent about when it comes to recommending, like here's what the manufacturer recommends, and here's what we recommend. Here's the value associated with both. You'll do maintenance a little bit later and a little less often, and you're covered to 560. You'll do maintenance a little earlier and a little more often, you're covered the rest of your life. We say go this route. It's the much wiser route to take.
No, that makes sense. We have both the coolant flush machines, and we do not do a ton of them. We just don't. We try, but people are just, we're like, okay, but hey, these are the problems. Yeah, well, I guess I'll roll the dice. It's just like, wow. I mean, I get it. Some people are broke right now. I mean, look at the world just went through. I mean, so everything's so much more expensive than it was.
Yeah.
And still, I don't want to sound morbid, but some of these old timers die off and stop talking all their shit about stuff they don't know about. Like, it was great in 1962. Well, guess what, buddy? It's 2024. Things have changed.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. None of us like change. As we get older, change is a bitch. We all, I don't like it.
I thought we were going to talk politics for a second there. I was like, where's he going with this?
No. But it's tough trying to talk somebody into has done something for so many years one way, and all of a sudden they get this new vehicle, and you're like, hey, you have to do X, Y, and Z. They're just like, it's kind of crazy.
Well, and some of the other factors too, the average age of vehicles on the road has jumped to 14 years. This is as of 24. That's the latest stat. The cost of vehicles, both to purchase and repair, is through the roof. Interest rates are high too. I mean, more and more the idea of just taking care of the vehicle that you drive makes sense. Not just you want to keep it on the road, but when you go to sell that car, you've got a list of maintenance records and free repair coverage and all your components. I guarantee you'll get money back in resale value as well as a consequence.
Oh, absolutely. And our shop management program reports to Carfax.
Okay, that's huge. Yep.
So, it can show you your oil changes and all that stuff, which in my opinion, that's a bonus.
Oh, for sure. If I'm buying a car and they can show me all those records,
huge.
It's like, okay, that gives me a tremendous amount of confidence on this vehicle.
We had a customer, he was a customer for 15 years. He had a 1984 or 85 Suburban with a 6.2 in it.
Wow. 6.2 diesel then back then.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
He had every tank of gas he ever put in there, the mileage he got, how much he spent from the day he bought that truck. Along in that folder was every maintenance ever done to that truck.
That would be my dad. That's what my dad does. He's
that thing when he
maybe minus the gas.
Yeah, he couldn't drive, and he said, "Son, what do I do with this thing?" I said, "I'll buy it." And I said, "I'm going to tell you right now, I'm just going to resell it. I have no use for it." And a young guy ended up buying it. He was just like, could not believe that I said, "You do realize this happened?" And he had the original pencil. So the original pencil at one point was like this. It was like this from writing in this book. Because older people back in the day used to write in pencil.
Yeah.
Because they erase. And I thought that was a really good idea. So I'm a little bit crazy about when we do our vehicles, our company vehicles, we keep our maintenance records. We keep every record. We open a repair order in the shop, and we do everything. And my guys, like my two co-partners, Jim and Jason, Jim's at Motor City and Jason's at Garrett's, they both have newer Duramax trucks. Mm-hmm. One is an AT4 and the other one is a High Country with the Duramax. And we do all the maintenance on them per GM specs because them trucks are expensive.
Absolutely.
What about fuel filters? Let's talk about fuel filters on gas motors are kind of a thing of the past.
I was going to say, most of if it's there, it's in tank on a lot of them.
Yeah, diesel fuel filters.
We typically recommend, and we don't have a strong passion about it, but typically it's every 30,000 or every 15,000 is what we typically see shops recommending, and we recommend our diesel injection service every second fuel filter, so every 30,000 miles.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys see a very big value in that? Now, we used to do them on the 6.0s a lot because the 6.0s, remember the EGR valves would get carboned up?
Yep.
Even if the EGR cooler wasn't leaking, they would still get carboned up and cause drivability problems. That kind of went away with the 6.4 and then the 6.7. So what is the benefit of cleaning your induction system on one of these newer diesel engines?
So induction we do far less often. Most of what we do is just a diesel injection. We isolate the rail and we focus on cleaning the injectors, restoring proper atomization and proper fuel spray pattern. If you get an orifice that doesn't spray correctly, it should spray out in kind of a star pattern.
Correct.
And it goes almost horizontal in the combustion chamber. And if it doesn't, you get cold spots in the combustion, you get incomplete burning of fuel. And ultimately, it's more particulates out the exhaust, and it's more buildup in the DPF, which means you regen more often, and then ultimately more ash builds up, and it shortens the lifespan of that DPF.
We just did that, was it DRP service on Lincoln's truck? It's a diesel.
Yeah, the ERP.
That's engine restore.
EPR?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they just told me they're doing it. I'm like, okay. That's supposed to clean everything. What does that stuff do?
Yeah, so the EPR, it's going to bring back the compression in the vehicle. It's going to go through. It's heat activated, like most of our products are heat activated. We poured in the old oil before we do an oil change. We're going to run the vehicle for 10, 15 minutes. It's going to go through, clean out all the cylinder walls. It's going to get rid of all the tarnish that's building up on there. Any deposits that are getting on those low tension rings, it's going to clean it up. Actually, I partnered with Mike just about a month ago, and we were in a shop and we were doing a compression demo on a vehicle. And
Briarwood Firestone, yep.
And we had a technician that was adamant he wanted us to use his vehicle. He wanted a free oil change of the day.
It was a Cruze too,
yeah,
Chevy
2017 Chevy Cruze with 127,000 miles. We let the technicians do the compression test, their tools. We let them perform it. We went ahead, did a compression test on the engine before we did anything. We actually drained 5 quarts of oil out of it, left the old filter, put 5 new quarts in, plus the EPR. And we started the vehicle and let it run for exactly 15 minutes, and then we let the lube tech come over and
16 Cruze. You were close.
Oh, close. We let the lube tech come over and perform the oil change, and then we dumped a can of the MOA in, motor oil additive in that we recommend, and we probably walked away for probably about 40, 45 minutes and went over some other things. Came back to the vehicle after it cooled off, and that little 1.4 liter picked up 165 pounds of compression.
So and it's across all 4 cylinders, and I don't know, probably can't even see it in the camera. And yeah, that was just the EPR. So it cleans the ringland areas, cleans the cross hatching of the cylinder walls. It ideally should hold oil and create that piston ring cylinder wall seal. And Volvo recommends that product in a factory service bulletin whenever you get excessive blow-by, positive crankcase pressure, run BG 109, just to restore compression and stop blow-by. So it works very, very well.
I agree.
Same in the diesel world.
Let's talk about MOA really quick, switching gears, because I forgot about that product till I just looked over and seen it. And I'm like, we used to sell a lot of that.
Yeah.
What exactly does MOA do? I know it's motor oil additive.
Motor
right?
oil additive.
Highly technical name.
It is. It's a super vitamin for your oil. Basically, what it's going to do is it's going to take the lower viscosities and the lower viscosity oils that were run today. Things break down just so much quicker. This is going to have all the great properties that are in there that's going to allow that engine oil not to break down prematurely and allow us to get to our service interval with the oil still protecting at the end.
Right, and most people don't realize that you could put 5 quarts of oil in. By the time you go to do your oil change, it's not 5 quarts of oil, it's 5 quarts of shit.
Right.
That the oil did its job, the detergent package in the oil. And that was one of the things they were talking about in when COVID was going on. Remember, they could not get the detergent packages for the oils. They couldn't make the oils.
Right.
Oil is just not oil. It's got chemicals in there for cleaning and doing lots of different stuff.
This is one of my customers. He's a service advisor at BMW there. But look at what he wrote below that. You can click on it and enlarge it. But below it, he wrote that's his 3-liter BMW engine, 259,000 miles, and it's spotless.
It's pristine. Yeah, exactly.
So MOA, think of the 3 L's: longevity, lubrication, lifetime coverage. It makes the oil last longer before it breaks down and forms sludge, makes it lubricate better or reduces friction. And even if that smoke and mirrors and the cool bearing demo we do isn't real, up to $4,000 engine repair coverage. I mean, that's the ultimate value right there. But
I agree.
We make oil last longer than when it came out of the bottle and perform better. So the engine, the result is, like that picture, it stays clean inside and protected against wear. That's what MOA ultimately does. It's not a viscosity increaser, like John said. It's meant to take whatever viscosity oil it is and make it perform like the day it came out of the bottle the whole time it's in the engine. Ideally, you put a 020 in at 65,000 miles. It drains out as a 020 at 70,000 miles. You don't want it to thicken up or the oil level to decrease. So it maintains the physical properties of oil.
It's definitely. I think that people are just not educated enough on your products. I think that's one of the problems. It's almost like you need to have a BG convention to have all these service advisors or, in certain areas to get everybody together and talk about this stuff because it's real. It's a real problem. It's a real concern. I sound like a fanboy over here, for God's sakes, but I have fixed a lot of problems with your guys.
So you live it. I mean, that's your business.
And I'd be an ass if they say, well, I didn't make money doing it. Yes, but there's a benefit for both of us. I make money, your car is protected, and if something happens and you're in the guidelines of you guys pay for it or put money towards it.
Yeah.
And let's face it, you could put a transmission in nowadays in one of these Transits and stuff. It's $10,000.
No,
absolutely. That 10 speed is very expensive. Yes.
It's absolutely crazy. And to your point, we were talking back, 2013, 2014, 2015, just a little bit ago. We were extremely lease driven, especially in the metropolitan areas here. Everyone was leasing their vehicles. No one was talking about cost of ownership on these vehicles. We're keeping our vehicles longer than we ever had before.
Yeah, lease deals aren't there now.
No, the lease deals aren't there. We're driving vehicles longer. We have to start doing maintenance, and at the OE level, they've recognized that. And I mean, the conversation's real. I mean, we're living it every day.
Well, you know as well as I do, these guys are saying the average mileage driven a year is 12 is absolute bullshit. Because I know it's more like 20.
I was going to say 15 to 20 easy.
Easy. So, I remember the lease. We got slow at a period of time. It was Garrett Auto and Truck Service, so we did cars too. Mm-hmm. And I remember the lease bloom. Everybody and their brother would go do a freaking Sunbird or whatever for $99. And like all of a sudden they need front brakes. Screw that. I'm going to go trade it in and lease a car.
Yep.
Well, nobody gave a shit about maintenance. And that was a tough time to even do oil changes. Like some of these people are such asses. They're like, it's a lease car. I'm not even changing oil. Well, then they started tightening the lease rules. Remember all that?
Oh, yeah.
Because these people were just hammering these cars.
Yep. If you bring it back, we're going to charge you for tires. Unless you replace tires, you got to get brakes done before you turn, or we're going to charge you for brakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all that stuff kind of went. And so, that was a very interesting time. So here's the last, I guess, did we cover everything? We cover except for brakes, right?
I think that's right. Yeah. Engine, transmission,
cooling system,
coolant, power steering, driveline.
Yeah. So here we are at brakes. Because I'd like to get back into the oil interval stuff later, but brake fluid, most people don't understand brake fluid. And we learned more about brake fluid than I ever wanted to know when I was at Henry Ford at college. And that was just like that much.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to be huge. I mean, now I was reading last night, you guys got 5.1 out. And that covers everything right up to electric vehicles, correct?
It does, yep. And that is, I think at the boiling point's 510 degrees. So it's still a glycol-based fluid. .5, not to be confused with .5, which is a silicone
base.
Yeah, which it's not hygroscopic, so it won't pull in moisture, that's a property we want brake fluid to do. We don't want it loose in the system, and it's also not ABS compatible. But yeah, it's a low conductivity, lower viscosity, very high boiling point brake fluid. So off the charts. And the reasons to replace brake fluid, we've already hit on them a little bit, or maybe that was a pre-discussion we had.
That was pre-discussion, yeah.
Yeah, but even brake fluid manufacturers will tell you the corrosion inhibitors, your protection against corrosion is depleted to about 10% of its original levels after 2.5 years of driving. But as moisture accumulates in brake fluid, because it is hygroscopic, it's a good property of brake fluid, it begins to take on the properties of moisture, which means the boiling point lowers, and the brake fluid ever boils, you get a nice soft pedal. So fluid, that it doesn't compress, so you get a nice, right from your foot to the master or the caliper, you get a direct link, but when it boils, you get a pedal that goes to the floor, you don't stop. And then the other concern with brake fluid taking on the properties of moisture is it begins to eat the inside of the brake system, and maybe it's ABS pump, maybe it's master cylinder, maybe it's calipers, piston C's in the calipers, proportioning valve. But yeah, now you've got expensive components to replace, and you don't maintain away problems with brake systems. Once corrosion happens, you're replacing parts at that point.
And a safety factor in it. I mean, once it starts to break down, we're not going to stop as fast. I mean, and there's times, I mean, I know we've all been there before, stuck on 96 and had to do a panic stop in that. Sometimes 10 feet is the difference from, being in a fender bender on the side of the road to, driving home safely to your family.
Sometimes the guy in the Isuzu cab over behind you is looking at his phone and slams right into you.
Right. And
or something approximately like that.
And think about this. How old are you?
44.
I'm 53. You're
44.
44. Think about back when we were in high school even, 85 mile an hour in a car was hauling the mail.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I had an old 88 Bronco too.
Right.
If I could get there, I was flying.
So think about going 85 now. Not a problem.
You don't realize you're doing it.
It feels like 50.
Yeah.
So
You look
that
down,
brake
oh my gosh.
systems has to be way better than it was 15 years ago to
Yes.
stop. Yes, probably the cars are maybe lighter, but you're going way faster, and you have the cell phone element, the texting, like not paying attention. They say, you got to pay attention. You can't have your phone, your screen, your truck, or your car is this big.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a lot of things going on there. And that brake fluid, I'd be willing to bet you if you did a study about boiling brake fluid back in the day versus now, I bet you it boils now more than it boiled back then with the hard stops and
Yeah,
stuff
the potential.
like that.
A lot of manufacturers have gone .4, .3. And I might get someone commenting that I'm wrong, but .3, the dry boiling point's 384 degrees. .4 is 446. Our .4 is over 500. Our 5.1 is, I think it's 510. But yeah, boiling points and the requirements for boiling points have increased dramatically because of that, for sure.
Yeah, and another aspect of this that people don't talk about, what has gotten cheaper, thinner, and shittier over the years? Rotors.
Yeah.
Okay, back and you pull the rotors off your grandpa's Delta 88, you need a cherry picker.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
you could turn them.
carry two rotors. Yeah, you could. Now they say they're not even serviceable. Just throw it in the garbage and buy a new one.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, these composite rotors with no bearings and braces in them, they're just little pieces of shit, and they warp quick.
Yeah, for sure.
A few heat cycles, they're junk.
Yep.
So that brake fluid really something had to get better because everything else got shittier. Is my point.
Yeah.
We went to Corvette. Ron Fellows in Las Vegas to the C8 driving school. I had done the C7 driving school, and they talk about brakes and stuff like that. And they actually get you going 60 mile an hour, and they have you say, jam the brake pedal as hard as you can, try to put it through the floor, hold it there, and steer the car. And they teach you how to use ABS.
Oh, that's cool.
That is a class that I think they should teach in driver's ed.
Yeah.
Because learning how to use an ABS system to steer the car, you can do it. Okay, we're talking, I'm going 50 mile an hour. I jam the brakes on. At the last second, he says, go that way or go that way. And the brakes are jammed on. And you can actually steer the car. Most people don't know that. Most people jam it on. The minute it starts going, they let go like, oh my God, I'm going to break it. No, you have to hold it down.
Yeah.
And, them Corvettes, he said they changed the brake fluid every year on them because they're track cars.
Sure.
What was your guys'?
When we were running on I was usually bleeding the brakes and going through almost a brake fluid change every race.
Yeah. And see, people don't even take that into account. So when I go to you, so the rule at my shop is if I'm doing brakes, you're getting a brake flush.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or I'm not warranting it. I don't have to do the brake flush, but I'm not warranting anything.
There's a lot of logic in that too. I mean, moisture settles at the lowest spot in the system, the calipers. Typically, that's where rust occurs. You put thicker pads and rotors, that piston pushes back in. All that shoves back up into the brake lines.
Absolutely, and we every time, and I don't know how our brake fluid sales are. Everything goes in waves nowadays. It's like we used to sell a lot of brake fluid. I don't know how much we sell now.
Yeah, you guys do pretty good.
I know you oversell us on trans fluid.
That's what you think. I mean,
But we do, I believe that the brake fluid, and I did a test on my wife's car. I did not do anything. I did not do any brakes. I said, pull it in and do a brake flush on it, and we're not going to say it. It's an Explorer. I did the oil change, and I did the brake flush. I didn't say, man, what did you do to my car? That thing stopped so nice. And that thing was
cool.
only a year old.
Wow, that's a cool testimonial.
Yeah.
You know, and if anybody knew my wife, she would not lie for me. she just wouldn't do it. So the ABS component part of it alone, I mean, some of these ABS modules, and I think they're getting a lot simpler now than they were earlier on with all the valves and stuff like that. But them are $8,000 or $9,000 at one time.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. Wow.
Yeah. Some of them on the international trucks and stuff, they were huge. All these motors on them and stuff like that, and we would take them apart. For a while they're serviceable. Then I didn't want to do it because of the liability, so I would just sell, because we would take it apart and do it, and like, oh look, it's scored there, and then you put it back together and it caused a problem or a code. So I'm like, we'll just sell them a whole new unit.
Yeah.
And you know, I kept that around for a long time. The guys from international trucks, like, you don't want to do it, don't. But you're going to be buying one of these, and by all means, I'd rather sell you that big, whole, huge box for $9,000 than flushing your brakes. So your call, you know. And a lot of times they would trust you and do it, you know.
Yep, that's a no-brainer for sure.
You know, but the days of wheel cylinder rebuilds and caliper rebuilds and stuff are over. So you just replace a lot of the stuff and flush it, and you're good to go.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. Just keep the brake fluid moisture-free, keep the boiling point where it's supposed to be, and keep the corrosion protection there, and yeah, it'll last you indefinitely.
And you know, you guys should be passing out the freaking moisture strips like candy if you could get people to use them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but it is great, especially with the technology today that our customers at the independent repairs, they're able to digitally send the stuff over to their customers, you know, pictures, and they're able to take a look at these brake strips that we have. What he's talking about is we dip with a brake strip, we dip the old fluid and it'll change color. It'll let you know exactly where the fluid condition's at and if it's time to change it or if it's still in great condition. And it's right in front of the customer. It's no denying it. When it's ready to change, it's time to change.
No.
You know, we didn't bring up FrigiFresh and the evaporator cleaner on the GMs, and I live that. You know, Jim's truck the other day, he brought it in, and Jim's truck was Steve Garrett's truck. When Steve Garrett passed away, we had bought that truck new, so I'm like, well, I'm not going to sell it. It's got 80,000 miles on it. So I'll just go through it and everything, and that truck's been wrecked 85 times, and it got nailed by a hailstorm, so I put all the panels on the truck. And Jim's truck came down to the shop the other day, and I'm like, man, it stinks like shit. You know the GM must wet dog smell from the evaporator cord? And his had that, and we had some FrigiFresh over there and some deodorizer, and I did that, and it works.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, absolutely. It's neat stuff. It's definitely not perfume. It's a medical grade antibacterial leader. It actually goes in and all those smells that we're smelling, and it's mold, pollen, spores, all the nasty stuff, and it goes in there and kills it.
That's EPA registered too. If you look if you use a can of it, keep it in the counter. There's an EPA registration number on the front of the can. Like before COVID, I didn't know that, didn't care about that. After COVID, and you see, I'm going to offend anybody. Also, I don't care if I do. But
that's okay.
You see the people by themselves in their car with a mask on, or two or three. Like they're afraid of something, whether it's real or not. This will kill whatever it is that's got them in such a panic. I mean, it works amazing.
Yeah,
it does.
I should get a sign. You need FrigiFresh.
Yeah. I mean, it kills everything from the outside vent, where the fresh air intake, right through the cabin vents.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll kill everything in there. If you've got respiratory sensitivities, maybe organic material, you mentioned mold spores, they cause your throat to burn, use FrigiFresh. It'll kill it. Absolutely.
No, that stuff works good. And I know the battery stuff, I sell it a lot because the batteries corrode nowadays with all the freaking high amperage on lift gates and stuff like that. We do put the rings on and stuff like that, and them do help. What do you guys feel about that?
I will say that is such a critical service. You guys ever watch South Main Auto on YouTube? I shouldn't tout another channel, but Erico.
That's okay. I'm not. Once again, I don't.
Anyway, he did a great video. He did a whole wiring harness on a Honda Accord or something. There's a 2-minute follow up to that. Everybody's beating him up, and you could just cut the cable off and did a terminal end. So he took a razor blade, he cut back in an insulation and ripped it back, and all that copper wiring was just green crusty. So when you took it, it had corrosion just spilling out of it. And I mean, that wiring harness probably $200-300, maybe a tow bill preceded that, who knows? But yeah, when that happened, and you'd mentioned the electrical load and batteries, the voltage transportation requirements, you get voltage drops, it causes all kinds of weird things to happen, and those green crusties will do it all day long. If it doesn't cause a no start and a tow bill, it'll probably at least cause a lot of weird issues that you can't pinpoint easily. And you don't see it instantly at the terminal because it wicks back into the cable depending on the style. And so if we can save a customer a tow bill, a no start at 10 o'clock at night at the grocery store, and maybe buying a positive cable, that's huge. That's a critical service, I will say.
And I would agree with that too. It's just, I honestly, I don't disagree with anything you guys say. It's, we live in a world where the other guy on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube is going to, tell us what we know. Okay, well, I know how to fix cars, and I also have a lot of experience fixing cars, and I've also got my ass in trouble and had to spend money that I didn't have back in the day when I was starting out fixing something like that. Like now, I'm pissed if we're going to go ahead. Now, let me say, if we find a terminal that's got smashed, okay, and we can re-terminate it, and that's one thing. But if I'm going through a wiring harness and it's crusty, like on a 6.0, where it comes up underneath the air intake, and the truck's a no start, you grab it and wiggle it, and the truck starts, okay, it gets can't come sync and starts, okay. Then you pull one wire out, and it's feels like spaghetti out of the box.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. At that point, yo, Joe, you need a wiring harness. Well, that's $3,000. I don't know what to tell you. If you want me to fix this wire, we're going to go ahead and lay this out really clearly. I will fix the one wire. There's probably 40 more that are going to break. So you're going to tow this truck back at least 8 more times, 10 more times before we get it, and maybe not even then. So if you're okay with that, spending 5 times more, later on, that's fine, or do it all now. Your call. And I think if you educate your customer on that and say, hey, you need this wiring harness because of this, and this. A lot of times they're like, okay, I don't have the money. Can you make it work? Or here's the famous one, where I was going to sell the truck anyway. Whatever,
right.
But my point is, the guys on YouTube, they haven't been through that. It's the guy arguing with me the other day about DEF. Here's another one. They're arguing about DEF fluid. Does DEF fluid matter? No, it's all the same. Well, that's not true because some of it sits on shelves. There is different. The stuff in the pump is the freshest. I see that causes the least amount of problems in people's systems in these trucks when it's fresh. I'm sure the hell not going to buy 6 months worth and let it sit in my barn and then go bad and cause all kinds of problems.
No, or sitting there buying some of the stuff sitting right in the window with the UV lights coming in, just absolutely deteriorating it.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about, you used to be a service advisor, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about you selling BG products, give people a little bit of an education on selling this. I'm sure you guys go through sales pitches, right?
We do lots of
Give some guys some
training.
ideas how to sell your products.
Yeah. Well, my easiest thing is that being on this side of BG now, my best sales pitch is you guys, really, at the end of the day. Your technicians, they get to see this stuff firsthand. I got to come into your shop just a few weeks ago, and you were talking, man, I got this pretty much a brand new vehicle, this Yukon, and man, it's stumbling. Can you fix this? Well, let's try. And we did a full fuel induction service on the vehicle, and we took care of the stumble. That right there turns you into your own salesman. I mean, it's pretty simple for when the next customer comes into your shop and they're going, hey, I got a stumble and I don't know what's going on. You're going, hey, I know how to fix this. We can do a fuel induction service on it. Did it to my own vehicle. They're coming in there for a reason. You built a relationship with these guys. They're coming there because they do trust you. I mean, we get wrapped up in our own little worlds and our 4 walls that we understand the stuff and the terminology, and our customers really don't. I mean, they come to us for a reason. They trust us. Let's hope they trust us. I mean, if we're doing a good job, and that was the big thing when I was an advisor. I was an advisor for a couple of years, and I had customers coming in to talk to me. You wouldn't bore them too much with getting too in depth on what it was, but they were there for a reason. They had a problem going on with their vehicle. They trusted in you. They need it fixed. What's it going to take? And you talk them down the right path and ultimately fix the problem, and they're happy. They're going down the road.
I would agree with that. New customers, they're a little bit harder to get their trust nowadays. And, one other thing a lot of shops are facing right now is how expensive this stuff has gotten.
Yeah, but, you're right. New customers are really difficult. But, I got my father. My dad's 74 years old, and my dad's one of the first ones. If he hasn't been somewhere, he's on Google. He's looking at Google reviews. He's looking at your customers that you've already built a wonderful relationship with, and hearing their success stories, and also reading the couple probably reviews of that angry customer that we're just never going to make happy anyway. But it's real important this day and age, and with technology, we keep going back to technology. I mean, it's funny. I was just a kid when we were really starting to come into the ABS days. I remember hearing old timers, especially around the racetrack, talking about ABS and vehicles don't need this, and man, you're going to get more accidents, and it just doesn't stop as fast. And now look at, you're in a performance Corvette and doing some pretty cool stuff out on a racetrack where ABS is making you go faster.
Yeah, going around corners at 89 mile an hour. Before I went out there, I had no clue what that car was capable of with the technology. It was absolutely insane going around corners and S corners. You're going 80 mile an hour, and the car's just glued to the road.
Yeah, take the fear factor and everything out of it. Look at your 16-year-old son. He's going around the corner probably faster than you are, and it's a big thing because of the technology today. The technology is allowing him to be a heck of a lot safer doing that stuff and making it easier at the end of the day.
I was just listening to a collision podcast today about ADAS and how people are so uneducated in recalibrating these cameras, and they wanted to talk about the windshield installers, the glass industry. They're like, these guys don't have a clue what they're doing. They went through a half-hour class on using the software, and they're charging $150, and they could be causing all kinds of problems. And I'm thinking to myself, where's this guy going? He's like, let me give you an example. Some of the cars, they say they have to have a full tank of gas. Yeah. They have to have one person there when they calibrate the gun. The front-end alignment has to be checked before you freaking aim the sensors. These guys are lifting trucks. The cameras are at the wrong angles. That means the braking. All this kind of crazy stuff that goes into making sure the car is square, meaning lined up before you aim these cameras, is all second thought, and it becomes dangerous. But then they're saying that it sure has decreased the amount of collisions in the world, but there's still old cars out there causing problems. I'm like, okay, and I do not like, and I'm going to be the first, I always say I'm a mechanic, right? The word technician is more of what we are nowadays because everything is so technical.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think, we've been all in the business, like these guys, oh, he's a technician. Oh, like, look at the little press. I'm a mechanic. You know what I'm saying? Like, the older guys call themselves mechanics. The new guys like to spice it up and call it, it's like, custodial engineer. You know what I mean? You're a janitor. You're spicing it up. I'm not knocking anybody's trades, but everybody tries to spice it up. I mean, but I will say
it's not inaccurate, though.
What's that?
It's not inaccurate to say that. It's correct.
Yeah.
Not to cut you off, but I'm saying I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, our business has gotten really, really technical. And YouTube, people tease about YouTube. I look at YouTube a lot on stuff, just trying to maybe get some little thing out of a video or whatever on YouTube. And they could be your friend or it could be your enemy, one way or the other. And you know what? There's going to be guys that are going to disagree with what we said on this podcast. Let them. It doesn't matter. They're not going to change my bank account balance at the end of the day. As long as I take care of my customers. And before we got on this podcast, we were talking about that. Okay? If you come in there and your tie rods are falling off your car, but I was too scared to check your front end to try to sell you tie rods, not something you don't need, but something you do need. Okay, there's a big difference. If I'm just selling you something to help my paycheck because I get a percentage of the parts, well, that you're a crook.
Yeah.
But
there's too much honest work out there that goes unsold.
Exactly. Yeah. If your tie rod's ready to fall off your car and I'm like, oh, don't worry about it, and your tie rod falls off your car and you kill yourself, well, I failed you. Yes. And like I told you guys before this podcast started, I've had problems with guys where it was a repo company, his Dodge truck. It came in there, the back brakes were grinding. We checked out, the ball joints were smoked in it, the one tie rod, and I wrote him an estimate and everything. He's like, who the hell told you to look at the front end of my truck? Well, when the mechanic drove it, so I said, mechanic drove it. He noticed it was all over the road when he hit the brakes. Well, that's a telltale loose ball joints on a Ford or Dodge. You hit it and it does the old big sway. Your ball joints are falling. Well, great. Now I have to replace them because you told me about it. Were you going to wait till you hit somebody and kill them, or when?
Yeah.
It's just...
Or a knuckle ripped off the lower control arm and you're laying on the side of the road?
Yeah, it's like, I don't get it. I mean, it sucks. Auto and truck repair is expensive, and it's there's some people that wait till it absolutely breaks, and then they fix it, or there's other guys that...
They roll the dice.
They roll the dice.
Yeah, I have that conversation with technicians and mechanics, all the time, and especially guys that are newer in the business, and talking about that while they're underneath the vehicle, asking them the simple question: how many lives do you think you saved last year? And they kind of just look at you funny. And it's like, no, our customers come in and they rely on us for our knowledge, our eyes, and being able to identify this stuff, to be able to get them from point A to point B with their loved ones. I mean, and that could be a lot of different things. I mean, it's we're doing a disservice, and it's very unethical if we're not letting our customers at least know, hey, this is wore out, this is a safety issue, this needs to be taken care of.
Right. And, unfortunately, people hate us as, shops. What is the thing they say? I didn't design it, I didn't build it, and I didn't break it. I'm the poor guy who's got to make this all work. At the end of the day, I have to call you up and go, hey, guess what? The engineer decided to do X, Y, and Z, and you have that model. It's going to be $3,000, and it's 2 days before Christmas. There's
a disparity of information there where, in a lot of cases, they know a sliver of what you know, and inherent in that is distrust. And earlier in the conversation, we had mentioned customers, particularly new customers, having distrust and making recommendations. And one of the biggest antidotes to that is, and it's in our benefit too, is just to be a very thorough educator of our customers. And I've had advisors say, well, Mike, one of my big hurdles is the educated customer. I'm like, I'm an educated customer. Your technicians are. You are. I know how I take care of a vehicle. And the more knowledge our customers, the more we can impart to them, the more of what we know about taking care of a car we can give to them, the easier our job becomes, and the more trusting they become. And the more they come into us saying, hey, I'm due for that alignment, I'm due for that fuel service, whatever, can you get me taken care of? You talked about it last time, I'm ready for it. Part of it's fixing the broken stuff. And this also ties into a conversation we had about how do we sell. Part of it's, here's what's broken on your car, but let's also talk about how to proactively take care of it to prevent those major mechanical expenses in the future. That's also one of my responsibilities to you, the customer, just to coach you on how to own a car. So not just the thing's broken, it's going to be $2,000 because we just become the bad news guys at that point.
No, and I would agree. And, back when I started in the business, you had to call up and sell something over the phone.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was good and that was bad. Think about how sharp you had to get at explaining stuff to people. Nowadays, people are lazy. They get a picture, they look at it, and the worst part about it is most people can't call you and go, hey, I don't know what the hell I'm looking at.
Yeah.
So I tell my service advisors, listen, send it, give it a few minutes. If they approve it, still call them and go, hey, did you understand everything that we sent you? Because I don't know if the guy was a dentist and he sent me a picture of a tooth with a hole in it, I'd be like, oh, that's a tooth with a hole in it. What the hell does that mean to me?
Yeah.
No different than them. We take it as being in the business. We take it as, okay, everybody knows what brakes are. That's not true.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody doesn't know what they're looking at. We send them a grind and brake. They might not understand. They might kind of get, but maybe not, right?
Yeah.
So if you call them and go, hey, your front brakes are grinding, your rear brakes have 30% left. Oh my God, I don't have the money. You could probably go a few weeks with the rear brakes. You're not going to kill yourself. You're going to kill yourself with the front brakes. Okay, well, what about the oil change? You're 4,000 miles over. Do you really want to gamble with this? Like, educate them. And when they say, man, that's expensive. Yes, it is. I don't disagree. When something's expensive, like I send people $15,000, $20,000 and they're, man, oh man. I'm like, yeah, tell me about it. Ford's prices go up weekly, not monthly anymore, weekly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And you look at even the average car payments the average is over $750 a month. That's the average. So if you got a repair bill of $3 or $4 or $5 grand, I mean, we're talking just 4 or 5, 6 car payments.
Yeah. And I've got away from, I don't do non-commercial, I don't do private cars anymore. I just don't. Like if one of our fleet customers have a car, they'll bring it in and we'll do it or whatever. But I'm not going to compete with Bell Tire and all these people where they're putting, parts on these cars and stuff like that. At their site. It's just not my business. I do medium and heavy truck and trailers, horse trailers. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. I'm just in a different world than most of these guys. So I don't necessarily have a budget to deal with. These guys, when they're delivering widgets, it costs them a lot more money for their truck to sit there.
Sure.
Than be on the road. So they're like, how can I get my truck on the road? 9 times out of 10, it's not a money thing. We don't rip people off, but it's not a money thing. It's a time thing.
Sure. Right. How quick can you get it back to me?
How quick can you get it back to me? So we try to be fair and we try to help people in that stuff. And that's why I wanted to bring you guys in. The whole, the maintenance thing is a big deal. Thanks, Mike and John, for coming on from BG Products, talking about maintenance, and it was good getting to know you. And
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, man. Take care.
This is a lot of fun, Kevin.
All right.